This is the letter Ayin, which has the value of 70 and is the symbol for sight and insight. The form of it has been described as a human face with two eyes at the top, united at the nerve center that receives and interprets those visual impulses, hence sight and insight. Consequently, the subject of some of the following videos will be focused on seeing and understanding what we see. The ancient term, the good eye, and the evil eye, which are biblical. Jesus himself used these terms, or one of the terms. The good eye can be used to bless, and the evil eye is used to, let's say, destroy. So you can see it's a very important subject to learn about. 2 Corinthians chapter 16 verse 9 tells us that God's eye roams to and fro over the earth, paying particular attention to the treatment that his people, the Jews, are receiving. And his recompense will be unfailing. There will be blessing for those who bless Israel, the Jews, and cursing for those who curse Israel, the Jews. Genesis chapter 12 verse 2 following. They are described as the apple of his eye in Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 10. The blessing of Christians has come solely through the Jewish people. We owe to them the scriptures, the entire idea, concept of a messianic kingdom, and, of course, the King Messiah himself. We all owe to the Jewish people. This is a debt that we can never repay, but that doesn't exempt us from trying. The eyes of the Lord are watching. Now, what possible relevance can the rebel Ayin of Joshua chapter 7 have to do with the Ayin? The link is once again the eye. Ayin was a man who is described as only looking with one eye. That was his big mistake. We must use both eyes, and it's a fascinating subject and something we'll look at in the later videos. Now, the first city that the Israelites attacked after God miraculously conquered Jericho for them was the city called Ai, which means eye. It's found in Joshua chapter 8, and it's such a rich source of insight. We'll spend some time on that later. Now, the shape of this letter has suggested the wings of a bird. And interestingly, there are many connections with flying and things of the air, things of elevation. Most interesting of all is the connection with one of the names of the Messiah, which is not very well known name, the Cloud Man. That's a messianic title, and the term begins with the letter Ayin. Jews, like Christians, are looking for the coming of the Messiah in the clouds of glory, and they have drawn some very profound reasons for why one prophet says he will arrive on a cloud and another that he would come on a donkey, and we'll look at this in a later video. Now, the Ayin and the Aleph are interchangeable. And this radically expands our understanding of the type of clothing that God provided for Adam and Eve after the fall. One aspect speaking of the blood of redemption and the need for sacrifice, and the other of the endowment of the Spirit of Christ, the light of the world. Only in the Hebrew can we discover these treasures. Now, the link between the Ayin and Aleph is also applied in the Shema, where the Ayin is written enlarged. Shema is written, and I've written it large because in the text it is, the Ayin is written large, Shema, an enlarged Ayin. Now, in his commentary on the book of Psalms, the Tzemach Tzedek explains that this enlarged Ayin is the antidote to the Ayin of the word miya'ah, which means of the forest, in Psalm 80, verse 13. And I'll write that word down, miya'ah. So we've got this word, miya'ah, which means in or of the forest. So miya'ah, and you'll see how he explains this. He says that this enlarged ayin is an antidote to this ayin. Now, what does this ayin represent? It speaks of the boar of the forest, miya'ah, that wastes the vine of Israel and the wild beast of the field that devours Israel. We may think of the Holocaust, and interestingly, many of the victims who were being devoured by the Nazis recited the Shema as they were dying. Now, Rashi says that here there will be an exchange of the ayin into an aleph. So this ayin will change into an aleph and become ya'ah. Instead of mi ya'ah, it's ya'ah. And that means river. This ayin has changed this ayin into an aleph, and it's turned the boar of the forest into a river. Now, a boar in a forest is dangerous. It can attack and seriously harm, even kill. But a boar can't swim, and in a river it's rendered harmless. And so you see how the enlarged ayin in the Shema is an antidote to this word here, the boar of the forest. Now, I must share another beautiful lesson based on the ayin in miya'ah. The Maharsha explains that the ayin of Shema alludes to Esau. I've just got a little bit of room over here. Esau is spelt like this. Esau. That says Esau. Maharsha explains that the ayin alludes to Esau and his descendants Amalek. There you go. Amalek, who constantly, Esau and his descendants Amalek, constantly attempt to destroy the Jews. Now, this is not just by violence, but through mediocrity. And here's where it gets very interesting. In Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 18, where we usually read, how he met thee by the way and smote the hindmost of thee, speaking of Amalek, the word translated met thee is karcha. Karcha. Now, this word is related to kerach. In fact, kerach is spelled exactly the same, just pronounced differently, and kerach means ice, and it means to cool down. In other words, and this is the interesting part I found, in other words, the Jews, the people of God, will be constantly subjected to a dampening of their spirits and a suggestion that they shouldn't be quite so zealous about their beliefs. Now, this form of attack is very familiar to us Christians today, and we have to resist it with all our might, saying with King David, I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But by these slave girls you spoke of, I will be held in honour. That's 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 22. Now, beware especially of our own hearts that sometimes tell us to be not quite so obsessive, not quite so zealous, and we cool ourselves down sometimes. We need to be careful of that. The wonderfully enlarged ayin of the Shema is, we might say, in your face. It represents the wholehearted and passionate acceptance of the yoke of Jesus. We make no apology for our choice to follow him, and we never keep it a secret. As Paul said, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. Romans 1:16. In the following videos, we shall also look at the significance of the value of 70. When the essence of a numeral is multiplied by 10, it brings the essence to perfection. Now, we know that 7 is spiritual perfection. 7 times 10 is 70. Therefore, the ayin represents perfection perfected, if that's good English. I don't know whether it is, but anyhow, there it is. Perfection, perfected, you get the idea. And obviously, it therefore appears very frequently within the Bible. Amen.